Hi everyone, Emily here from Emily Reads, and today I have for you my February wrap up. So in February, I'm trying to get my, I have a 52 book club journal that I've been using this year because I'm doing the 52 book club challenge. So currently I finished 7 books in that challenge. So I'm a little behind on the reading, but spring break is at the end of this month and I'm a teacher. I've got summer, so I'm not too terribly worried yet. And one of the prompts is like a debuts later in 2024. And that one I'm not sure how I'm going to fulfill. But for February, I read 7 books for a total of 3,120 pages. Okay, that sounds incredibly a lot. But here's how I do page counts. I don't count the pages read each day. Like I tried it once and I just couldn't keep up with it. So I just do the total page count when I finally finish the book. So a book might have taken me a couple of months to read, but the pages don't count until the month that I complete the book. So the numbers are a little skewed for this month because half of, like, probably 600 pages should have been for January. So that being said, I did read 5 physical books, 1 e-read, and 1 audio. 5, 6, 7. Yep. Okay. So first, I read Raiders of the Lost Heart by Joe Sugara. I think I butchered that name. Okay. So I really wanted to like this book, but I gave it 2.5 stars. And so this is about 2 archaeologists, and it has kind of like the enemies to lovers trope, and also second chance romance kind of. So they are in Mexico, and it's Carrie's life goal to lead this expedition to find these long lost remains of an Aztec warrior. And she believes that this warrior is her ancestor. And instead, Dr. Ford Matthews, he is the one who's actually leading the expedition. And he calls her in to kind of help with the expedition, finding these remains. And there's also the issue of theft, as that there's someone who is stealing archaeological artifacts. So the premise was really good. I grew up in a suburb of Chicago. I loved going to the Field Museum. I once wanted to be an archaeologist. And so the idea of like, ooh, a romance centered around an archaeologist, that sounds fascinating. So the premise was there. There's very little archaeology. It's more, he's hot, she's hot, I'm hot to trot. Will I get into their pants? And that just was not very exciting to read. I wanted more about the archaeology. She comes off like, they compare her to Lara Croft, and that's really what she comes across as, is like this adventurous person who is impulsive and doesn't think through her actions. And it's like, okay, if you've got a PhD in archaeology, you're no dummy. Can we please see your brains? And so I felt like it did a disservice to the female character, and to the male character, he came across as just very much a jerk who then was like, and he used some of his life circumstances to excuse the jerky behavior. And so they just weren't compelling characters, and I wanted more. I wanted something intelligent. Like, there was like no research done for this book at all. So again, it was a super cute premise, very poor execution. Then I read Bride by Ali Hazelwood. And I was very nervous about this book because I love her STEM novels. Her novellas are, there's one that really hit for me, and then the other two I was like, meh. But her novels I loved. So when I heard she was going into paranormal fantasy romance, I was like, not sure I want to check it out. And then I just had a really, really bad week at work. It was just really bad. And I just was like, you know what? I just want something to take my mind off of the stress. And so I went out on a Friday afternoon after work, bought this, and I read it within the weekend, and I just ate it up. I loved it, and I gave it 4.5 stars. And here's what I liked about it. So this is about Misery Lark, and she's a vampire, and she's in an arranged marriage with Lo Moreland, who's aware. And it's kind of in the realm of like there's wares and vampires and humans, and the three just don't mix. And to me, that really reminded me of A Discovery of Witches, which I love A Discovery of Witches. And so she ends up in this arranged marriage because it's a political alliance between the vampires and the wares, but she also has her own reasons for saying, sure, I'll be part of this arranged marriage. And there's some things that are not traditional vampire lore that I wanted more of. That's why I gave like a 1/2 star, because I wanted more of like, why are these vampires different from what we traditionally think of vampires? But like, she just can't tell you that. So Misery did not grow up with vampires. So she doesn't know everything about even what it means to be a vampire, because she was not raised by vampires. But I really did enjoy this, and there are so many different tropes that are in here, and I love a tropey time. So that's why it worked well for me. And I'm curious to see it seems to be that there will be a book 2, and there's some things that happened in here that have implications for Misery and for Lo that I'm hoping to see in later books. Sorry, I was trying to find a way to review it without giving spoilers. Then I did read and finish, I started reading this in December, maybe November, Habits of Highly Effective Teachers, The Ultimate Guide to Practical Behavior Management by Marie Amaro. And I'm sorry. I should add, it says that works. It works. Okay, so read this because this is going to work. Anytime you say the ultimate, I'm skeptical, and it was fine. Like, there are some things I was like, yeah, I know to do this, and I've gotten slack. Okay, cool. Like, I need to get back on this. But there are some things that I just so strongly disagree with. There are just some things that I just disagree with. And so I read it for professional development. I think this would be good for a new teacher, someone who just doesn't know. But I mean, they talk about, one of the chapters that I really struggled with was consequences, and how consequences are more punishment and not consequences. I don't know. Then there was a chapter about intrinsic motivation. Teachers will often say students should be intrinsically motivated, and while intrinsic motivation is optimal, some students may not have developed the skills or drive. The use of positive reinforcement has been shown to increase the development of intrinsic motivation. Like, so is positive reinforcement good? Or, man, we should get away from positive reinforcement. We should get away from positive reinforcement and tangibles, because students need to have intrinsic motivation. Look, adults don't have intrinsic motivation. Think about it. Why do you go to work? Because you get a paycheck. You need to pay your bills to live and to do the fun things that you want to do. And like that, I talked about that. We had online learning forum, and we actually read a whole long article about intrinsic motivation and how students need to have intrinsic motivation. I was like, look, like I don't have intrinsic motivation. Like, I go to work because I get paid because I need to live. And I said, and this whole talk about getting rid of tangibles is anti-ABA therapy, which is a proven research evidence-based practice for students who are autistic. So that's why I struggle with books like that in my world of special education. Because yes, we want students, of course, we want people to have intrinsic motivation. But we as adults are not intrinsically motivated either. We do stuff to save up for things, to, oh man, if I do this, then I'll buy like this as a reward for doing X, Y, and Z for so long. Okay, I need to get off my soapbox. Enough with that book. Then I also I did not read all of Arcanum Unbounded. So I had read some of these stories. I'm working through the Cosmere in publication order, and I have been stuck on some stories in here. Most specifically, The Sixth of Dusk. And they get really dark in this book. And I was just like, I needed to read some stories before I read Edgedancer. Finally, I just reached out in a Discord and said, look, I'm stuck on these stories. Do I have to read them? Because I want to continue on in the Cosmere in publication order. And people were like, nah, just skip them. So I did read Edgedancer, and I enjoyed Edgedancer more than I thought I would. So Edgedancer is a novella that comes between Words of Radiance and Oathbringer. And it features a character, Lift, who is really only, like, there's like one interlude with her in Words of Radiance. And in that interlude, I was like, nah, I didn't really care for her all that much. And I had to remember she's 10. She's 10 or 11 years old. So she's young. I actually enjoyed her a little bit more in this book, in this novella. So I'm glad I read Edgedancer. I liked it more than I thought I would. It does for sure progress some themes in this novella that show up in the book. So it is important to read it, and not skip it. And I gave Edgedancer 3.5, 4 stars. I'd say probably 3.5 stars. And then I listened to The Blade Itself. I had read this last February, and I tried to read Before They Are Hanged in January, and I was struggling with it. Some of it was just where my brain was. I think trying to read Conde of Monte Cristo and a dense fantasy novel just weren't working for me. And also, I was struggling with some seasonal. I struggle with seasonal affect disorder. So I think some of that was playing into things. And then I just had forgotten some things that happened in The Blade Itself. So I did get the audiobook with my Audible credits. And Stephen Pacey, he is a phenomenal narrator of this book. His voice for Glokta is fantastic. Like how because Glokta is described as not having all of his teeth and missing several from his upper and his lower, and like he'll suck his gums and whatever, and you'll hear all of that, like, and he does all sorts of different voices. He's great. So I can't read the Blade Itself in March because I'm working through some other books, but I know I'm going to read it probably in April. Did I say The Blade Itself? Before They're Hanged. I'm hoping to get to it in April. And I might do an immersion read because Stephen Pacey was so great. I can't listen to a book unless I've already read it before. So I know I'm not going to be able to listen to the Before They Were Hanged on audio, but if you are someone who can handle audiobooks, Stephen Pacey, reading Joe Abercrombie, it was amazing. So I gave The Blade itself 4 stars for the book. However, the narrator, 5 stars. Then I also read Redemption by Noelle Adams. I don't have a copy of the book. It was an ebook, and it was the 3rd book in the Worthings series. And this one features like a cousin. The main female character is a cousin of a character in the one before it. And her cousin-in-law had a stalker, and that stalker now has set his sights on her. So she's got a bodyguard, and this bodyguard she knew several years ago when she was younger, and she was more of like a party girl and very much involved in drugs and risky behavior. And this bodyguard had put her into rehab, and now she's sober and clean, but she does feel a lot of guilt over her behavior when she was younger, a lot of regrets, and it's a romance, and it was okay. It really is reminiscent of another Noelle Adams novella that she wrote called One Night with Her Bodyguard. So that's why I was kind of like, I felt like it was kind of a rehash of some of her other works. And I gave Redemption, I actually gave it more. I gave it 3.5 stars. I think I probably, like, thinking back on it, I probably would give it 3 stars. And then finally, I finished The Count of Monte Cristo. I literally finished this yesterday. Took me over 2 months to read it, bit by bit. I do plan on filming another video on why you should read this. I will say this, I gave this 4.5 stars. The reason why I did not give it 5 stars is Alexandre Dumas, I'm sure, was paid by the word. It shows that he was paid by the word. It definitely was in need of an editor. I did enjoy the themes of revenge and seeing really like what that revenge does to somebody and acting out the revenge. And boy, does Lecompte have a very twisted view on God and God's ways. So, I mean, this book is a classic for a reason, for sure. It definitely could have used an editor. The other reason why I knocked it down 1/2 star is it's very much a product of its time, in that this kind of is more like the Romantic period. And so in the Romantic period, everyone's kind of melodramatic. And towards the last like few hundred pages, everyone is, as the revenge is kind of climaxing, and he's finally enabled to enact all of his revenge on the people who imprisoned him. Trigger warnings, suicides are abounding, and people like, oh, my love, I can't be with my love, I want to commit suicide. And just every single person was feeling that way, it seems like. And it just became so melodramatic, and I just was not there for all of that. Like, it was so over the top, overdone, and that's why I didn't care for it. But you can see it is so tapped. I did thoroughly enjoy it, and I do think that people should read it, and more to come in a video. Whew. So that is what I read. March should be a little bit lighter with some middle grade stuff, because I just need a little lightness in my life after reading some pretty chunky books. Let me know your thoughts on anything that I've read, and tell me what you read in February. What was your favorite read in February? Please like and subscribe. Bye.